Hey there, I'm Verity Songon and this is the Confident CEO podcast, the show that takes you behind the scenes of starting and running your small or not so small business. We will cut through the misinformation and bad advice about starting and running a business and give you actionable tips and advice that you can implement to grow, scale and achieve your business goals. Let's dive in. Hey there everybody, and we are back with another review of The Apprentice, and this week's episode was all about creating lunchboxes and an app to go with the lunchboxes for 6 to 8 year olds. Oh my gosh, I loved this episode. I just thought it was too much. Like the comments that were coming from some of the candidates, I just thought were absolutely too much, and we're going to dive into that in a little bit. But I just wanted to give you a quick catch up of where we are at currently in, with me, with things that are going on. It's so exciting because I have just launched my podcasting services, decided to really niche down in the business and had several conversations with people over the Christmas break, and everyone was saying, like 99% of people were saying, oh my God, you need to do more of the podcasting things in terms of, you're answering people's questions so much, you're clearly enjoying the process. So I was like, how can I do, look at this. So we have reviewed the entire product suite that I'm now offering in the business, which is so exciting. I have got a DIY podcast course, which is going to be coming out later this year. Pre-sale is going to be on soon, so keep an eye on Instagram for that. I'm also going to be having a masterclass looking at your podcasting workflows. That's going to be coming out soon as well. And I'm now really super excited as well to be offering management services. So if you have been thinking about needing to get a podcast manager, if you're feeling overwhelmed with trying to do all the things when it comes to podcasting, because we all know that it's not just about hitting record. You've got the editing afterwards, you've got the graphics, creating sound bites, promotional ideas, creating quote banks for your social media, all the things, writing your show notes. If you are feeling really overwhelmed, if you are wanting to get back that time that you feel is almost being lost to all of those podcasting tasks, then do get in touch with me. I would love to talk to you about your podcast and see how I could potentially help with podcast management as well. So I've got a lot of exciting things going on, and I'm also going to be doing podcast launches as well. So if 2023 is the year that you are thinking I am going to get on with my podcast, I've had it on the back burner for the last couple of years. Even I spoke to somebody just yesterday where she said that she has been thinking of creating a podcast for the last 2 years, and just because of, the frustration of where she is supposed to start, because she's got all of this decision fatigue, things being blasted at her left, right and centre, people saying, use this software, use that software, and you need to learn to buy this, learn to use this microphone and buy that microphone. And she said the whole thing is just so overwhelming and just seems so time consuming that it's taken her 2 years to actually start creating her podcast. So if that is you, I am going to be doing one-to-one podcast launch services as well, which I am super excited about. All of that information is going to be in the show notes. So if you are interested in podcast launches, DIY course, podcast management, anything like that, or you just want to chat podcasts, check out all of the links in the show notes. But let's now dive in to talking about this episode of The Apprentice, lunchboxes and creating an app. The whole premise of this was creating, as I said, a lunchbox and an app that accompanied it for children aged 6 to 7. And I'm going to throw back to what I was talking about when they did the children's cartoon. Have none of them ever bought a lunchbox for a child or used a lunchbox as a child? Oh my gosh. So this is just my very personal opinion. Obviously, I was not part of the task. I'm not one of the candidates. And I get that, when you're in that situation, your mind doesn't necessarily think logically when you're put on the spot, so to speak. But the first things that I would be thinking, if somebody told me to create a lunchbox, 2 things immediately spring to mind for me. The first one is what food is going to fit in that. So what food do you typically put in a lunchbox? Well, as somebody who has to make lunchboxes most of the year, sandwiches, some fruit, maybe some like crackers or biscuits, something, carby kind of related there. And, maybe you fit your drink in there, or maybe your drink bottles goes separately. But definitely, you've got your sandwich, which is either going to be triangles or squares, depending on how you cut it. Something which, like biscuits, you can't really crunch those up. It's not like a bag of crisps that, might be able to be a bit more malleable. And fruit, trying to put an apple in some lunchboxes is just awkward. A banana, the same. So you've got to be thinking immediately, what are you actually going to be putting in this lunchbox? And I couldn't believe it, because both of the things that they came up with, this treasure chest and the leaf thing, I was like, what are you going to be able to fit in those? Like, you can't put sandwiches in those. Think of the lunchboxes that are out there. So if you either use a lunchbox yourself, or you've got kids and you make lunchboxes for them, or do you know what? You're just a person who goes into supermarkets and sees that there are lunchboxes for sale. They're nearly all square, or they're, if they're not square, they're, made of that kind of fabric stuff so that they're a bit more malleable in their shape. But fundamentally, they are designed to put food in. So that really confused me. And I'm going to come back to that point in a second about shape, because the other thing that I was going to say that immediately springs to mind for me is not just the shape and what you're going to put in the lunchbox, but also, and this is such a mum thing, is it dishwasher friendly? Like, can you just stick it in the dishwasher? And both of those ones that I looked at, I was like, oh my God, those just look a nightmare for putting in the dishwasher or even washing by hand. I mean, the leaf one with all those little corners, maybe this is just over some people's heads. Maybe I'm thinking of this way too in depth, but especially the leaf one with all of the little corners, I was like, oh my God, that's going to be a nightmare to try and dry all of those little divots and little bits. Like, when you get the stuff out the dishwasher and it hasn't like quite dried enough, or you've washed it by hand and you don't have enough time to leave it drain. That's all I could think, but maybe that is just a ridiculous point to make. But yeah, so those are the two things that I was thinking. What are you going to put in there? And also, what is the, how dishwasher proof is it? And how are you going to wash and dry this thing? So those were the first two things that I thought. And those two lunchboxes that came out, I'm not being funny, but as a parent, first of all, I would never buy those for my 6 to 8 year old. And also, I think my 8-year-old would have an absolute, I think she would die of embarrassment if I bought her either of those, because I agreed with everybody who said that they were both just so young. Like, they were just aimed at completely the wrong age gap. Now, I'm going to pick up on what I said before as well about the shape, because when they went to the pitch, I loved it. Megan, she had so much conviction. And when they asked about the shape, Megan turned around and she goes, well, square lunchboxes, they've been done before, haven't they? I think they're, and she just really made the point that it's a done product. But you know what they say, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yes, it's a done product, but that's because it works. Like I said, a square or a rectangle, you can put your food in it and it just works. I think they really overcomplicated it, both of the teams, by trying to come up with this really crazy shape. I would have gone with something much simpler personally and focus more on the app, but that's just me. But I loved her conviction, I have to say. The other thing which I wanted to pick up on with regard to the pitches was when Bradley and Sahel went into the pitch and they basically changed everything about the product. I just, one or two things I completely get. And, they've picked up on this on previous episodes of The Apprentice, in previous series of The Apprentice, that if you have got customer feedback or consumer feedback rather, and you want to put it to the people that you're pitching to, that potentially you're going to change the product, then yes, fine, by all means, put that in your pitch and say, this is what we've originally done, but this is what my consumer feedback is saying. So actually, when we come to market, this is the difference that you will see between the product that we're pitching at the moment and the product that is going to be actually, made available. But it was literally every single thing. Yeah, well, this is just a prototype. Yeah, this is just a prototype. You don't like the colour? It's just a prototype. You don't like the shape? It's just a prototype. I mean, everything was just, basically, I'd love to see what, if they had got orders, I would have loved to have seen what they eventually would have produced, purely because I think by the end of it, we would have ended up with nothing like what was actually pitched. And like I said, I got what they were doing. It has been advocated in previous episodes and previous series of The Apprentice, as I said, to take on board consumer feedback and all that kind of thing. But I think they just went too far which was, really picked up on when Alan Sugar was talking to them at the end and, led to the eventual firing, because I think they went overboard with that. They really did. The other thing that I wanted to pick up on for this episode, oh my gosh, the caterpillar. I was howling when the person who was being pitched to, the bloke, turned around and said it looked like the caterpillar was about to be shot, or like something like that. Oh my gosh, because that caterpillar did. He just looked terrified, and it was like he was told, you have to wear this hat to look cool, because what was that all about as well? We put a sun hat on him to look cool. I was like, it's not 1994. What? I don't know. I found that a little bit insane. And on the note of the caterpillar, I did kind of like what they were doing with their app. I understood their idea that you had to feed it, give it water, exercise it so that it would grow and go through these different levels to get to the butterfly. I think it was oversimplified for what it was, but I could see the potential there. And also, considering they're only given, is it like 1 day, 2 days, something, or to come up with that concept and, create it. I thought, actually, I didn't think it was the worst concept in the world. They had this gamification of levels, and there was the educational aspect as well. I think that for the age group, though, it needed to have a lot more thought and a lot more complexity behind it, but I liked where they were going with it. I won't knock them. I'll give them credit where credit's due. I could see where they were going with that. In comparison to the Pirate app, which I just had no idea what was going on. And to begin with, I didn't see the key in the Pirate's hands, and I thought they had forgotten to give the character hands again. And I was like, no, you can't do this yet again. Make a character without hands. And then I saw that he was holding like a little key or something like that. But what I loved so much about that Pirate is in the boardroom at the end, where Alan Sugar was asking about, the character and how it looked. Arvy, oh my god, Arvy, I just think he's hilarious. I'm so excited to see where he goes in this process, because I just think he's brilliant. He was like, but it's all about the smile. The pirate has a nice smile, and that's the important thing. And I was thinking, what planet are you on? How is that the important thing? But I love it how he just sees things a little bit differently. He really, you listen to what he's saying, he hones in on loads of different things that other people don't seem to be picking up on, which I think is really interesting. But it was just his conviction of like, it doesn't matter what the rest of the app's like, the pirate's smiling and that's important. I was like, yeah, just good for you, Arvy. You've picked up on that, and just, yeah, good for you there. So that did make me laugh, I have to say. What is interesting about the competition is I do feel like we're starting to hit, the competition of it is starting to heat up a little bit more now. I know that I was thinking for the previous episodes that everyone just seems a little bit nice in this round. Everyone's, oh, if you don't mind, and can we do this and stuff, but I'm starting to see the actual competitive elements coming out in people now, particularly in that last boardroom, particularly with Marnie there. I thought that, yeah, it was definitely starting to come out. People are starting, the competition is heating up in terms of the amount of people are, wearing down now. We've obviously had a couple of shock exits as well, where we didn't expect as many people to go. We had Reese last episode, and I can't remember what the girl was called earlier in the episode who left, but, we've had 2 people leave. So the actual number of competitors has actually shrunk a lot quicker than would have been expected. They would have expected to have, at least 2 more candidates unless there'd been a double firing. So because of that, because we're starting to see a reduction in the amount of competitors, I am starting to think that the amount of competition is starting to amp up, which is interesting, because I think we're going to see people who have maybe sat back a little bit, or maybe would have sat back for another couple of episodes, really having to be pushed to the forefront just to, kind of make their presence felt. And I think that was very much found with Bradley as well in the episode last night, when Alan Sugar was like, what is it you do? Are you just standing in the background? I think he is going to be very much watched for the next episode. So that will be interesting to see. But the final thing I wanted to talk about as well, before we conclude this episode, is about app creation. Because as I said before, I think they gave it their best shot, considering they're not given very long to put these apps together at all. And I do think that the Caterpillar one, it had more... I understand what they were trying to do in the pirate one. They were trying to give it the education element, but it felt like a test, to be quite honest with you. And I think there needed to be more thought process go into that. But, like I said, you can't knock them too much. I think there's only so much that you can do within the time given. But one thing I do want to pick up on is, if you've never created an app before, creating an app is hard work. It's very easy. I can't even think what the company's called now, but when I describe it, you'll probably know who I mean. But if you're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, literally this ad seems to be everywhere saying, online courses are cancelled and websites are cancelled and yada yada, all these different things are cancelled. You just need an app instead. But building an app, because I've done this in the past, I have built an app. There is an element of ease to it. But like everything, you still need to have your strategy and your process behind it. You can't just kind of go, here's my app, here we go. It wouldn't work. You have to, have your strategy behind it. Make sure that when people are clicking through it, it makes sense. Thinking about what is your customer journey, what is your user intent, gamification, if that's relevant, all these different things. There still needs to be strategy behind it. So I'm not going to go into too much about creating an app, its difficulty, its complexity, pros and cons and stuff. That could actually be a whole episode in itself. So if you're interested in that as a separate episode, do let me know, and maybe we can dive into that and do a separate episode on that. But I will say, building an app isn't the easiest thing in the world. And there is a space and a place for it in business. And whilst having an app will work with a lot of products for a lot of services, there are also a lot of products and a lot of services that it won't work for. So when you're seeing these targeted ads online and they're saying, get rid of your online course, get rid of your website, get rid of your coaching platform, you just need an app. Remember that, there's obviously a marketing gain behind that. They want you to buy the product. But as I said, apps have got their place, but they are difficult to build. So I do have to give them, kudos to the fact that they only had a couple of hours or a couple of days, whatever it was, and they created what they did there. But on that note, that is my summary, my review. Oh wait, no, I haven't even talked about Sahel leaving, have I? Did I think he was the right candidate to go? I'm not sure, to be quite honest with you. I really like Marnie. We know that I like Marnie. I've mentioned her several times on previous reviews, but I kind of think that maybe she should have gone this week, because from what, obviously, you only see what they show you, but from what they showed us, I kind of felt that she did just spend way too much time on the design part of the app. And yes, that's important, but at the end of the day, they needed everything else to go in there. They needed the user intent, the gamification, they needed some sound. It needed to be more strategy behind it than just what the crossbones look like on the pirate hat and what the backgrounds and all these kind of things. I like her, as we said, but I'm not convinced that she should have stayed, to be quite honest with you. And Bradley, again, I think he kind of needs to be PM on the next task, or he needs to, really, really pull something out of the bag, because I think he may have his cards marked if he's not careful. He does seem to be that one who always seems to be on the receiving end. I don't know, maybe that's just me. But Sahel, I also have to, I do agree to an extent, because he and Bradley did just kind of sit down in the pitch and basically say that what they were pitching was not going to be the product that they were going to eventually sell. And also, I think he made a cataclysmic error at the beginning of the boardroom by turning around and saying he stands by his product, and they sold none. You can't really stand by a product in its current format if it doesn't sell anything, because clearly there's not a market for it, or it needs a heavy, editing and what have you to get it to market. So I think he made a cataclysmic error there. So, yes, I think he probably was the right person to go, but I'm interested that it wasn't a double firing and that we didn't see Marnie go as well. But yes, so that is my review of that Apprentice episode. Obviously, looking forward to next week's. It's the immersive experience. I don't think they've done an immersive experience yet. They've put on a lot of experiences, in terms of like cruises and days out and corporate events and stuff. But I'm not sure they've ever actually run an actual immersive experience. If I've completely forgotten about one and you're an Apprentice super fan and you know that they have done an immersive experience before, please let me know and please remind me which series and episode that was and I'll go back, but I'm pretty sure they haven't. So yeah, I will be back next week with another review of the show, and hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I hope it's better weather than where I am, but I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Confident CEO podcast. Before you go, I would absolutely be overjoyed if you could take just 2 minutes to leave me a review in Apple Podcasts. Reviews are a great way to tell Apple Podcasts how much you enjoyed the show, and it helps the algorithm to push out the podcast to more people, thereby helping us to help empower even more badass businesswomen to grow their inner CEO and grow to be the confident CEO of their business that they can be. I love to shout you out in your reviews as well. So you never know, you might be hearing your name on the podcast in the next episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.